I offer my sincere and devotionful salutations to the holy feet of Sri Sri Vishveshatirtha Swamiji, my preceptor and my Swarupodharaka Guru. And having fallen at the holy feet of Sri Sri Vishwaprasanna Tirtha Swamiji, who is not only my preceptor, but also the head of Vedic, Vedantic Studies Research Center. I also thank Dr. Dhananjay Acharya and all his colleagues for having given me an opportunity to present my views upon the very sensational topic, relevance of Sanskrit language in the present world or contemporary world. I also congratulate all the participants who have gathered on this platform, not just to listen to me, but also reflect upon these views of mine and finally give me a very good learning experience. Welcome all. I would like to start my lecture or this short speech of about probably 40 to 45 minutes by raising a question. The question is, I think some of them are still unmuted. May I request all of you to mute yourselves and facilitate, please? I think one Mr. Prasad is unmuted. Thank you. The question is very valid, I believe. Anybody can answer. Let it be an interactive session first. The lady who has given birth to you, you call her as your mother, right? You call her as your mother. The lady who has given birth to you, you call her as mother. My question is, why not father? Or why not sister? Or something else? Why only mother? Why not something else? Is my question. Can anybody amongst this august gathering try to answer to this question, please? You can answer in the chat box. I think chat box is made open to all. They can answer to this question. Why do you call the lady who has given birth to you as your mother? Why do you use that word mother? Why not father? Why not sister? Is the question. Okay. Without wasting much of time, let me only try to answer to this. See, this is the plight of various other languages like English. I am compelled to speak in English, hence I am speaking to you all in English. Otherwise, I would have spoken to you in Sanskrit. I would be delighted to speak in Sanskrit. Anyway, to make many other, most of the audience here understand or know what I am actually intended to speak, I think they have arranged, they have facilitated in such a way. See, I think the language English itself is like that. You ask somebody, Why do you use the word mother? Why not father? He says it's a crazy question. This person has gone mad. In every dictionary, we find the word mother only to the lady who has given birth to us. So there is no other word. I think this person has no knowledge about English, they say. Why? Because you have been blindly just using it without even questioning why only this, why not something else. It's a valid question. I need to know the logic behind this. Why shouldn't I? People say Westerners, they question us for each and everything. They want to know what is the reason. I am asking you, my dear friends, why don't you try to know that why the word mother is used to the lady who has given birth to you? Why not father? You have no answer. You just say that the language was written like that. We are used to use such words. That's all. Whereas you ask the same question to me in Sanskrit. Pertaining to Sanskrit, if you ask me the same question that why should I use the word mata in Sanskrit, the word which we use to the lady who has given birth to us is mata. Now you ask me why only mata, why not pita, why not bhrata or suta, something else, why only mata? I'll answer you. See, mata is the word which is formed out of the root called ma, mang mane, which means mane, manarthe. The sense or the meaning of this word is, or of this root is, manam or honor. The one who is most honorable in the family is called mata. I bet, I challenge you all, if you could prove that your father or your sister or your brother or somebody else, your aunt or your granny or whoever is the most honorable person other than your mother, let me see. Justify, prove it. Nobody can be as honorable as mother. So mang mane, that root is helpful to us in forming the word mata. Therefore, mata means the most honorable person. If you find your father to be the most honorable person in your family, we have no objection. Please go ahead. You can use the word mata even to your father because he is the most honorable person. Because in Sanskrit, the linga or the gender of the word is totally different from the gender of the person whom we are talking to. Therefore, the word gender is different from the person's gender. It need not be the same. Many a times it is same, that's all. But there is no such rule that, because for example, take a word. The word which we use for the wife is, there are many words, of course. Patni, bharya. There is another word, kalatram. Kalatram means wife. But you know that is in napumsakalinga, in the neuter gender. So that doesn't mean the lady is also neuter, right? So therefore the word gender is different from the person's gender. That is the beauty of Sanskrit. We do not, try to mess with all these things. Word linga is different and person's linga is different. It need not be the same at all. So therefore, whomever you feel is the most honorable person in your family, you can use the word for that person, that is a mata. You call her or him by the name mata, we have no objection. Likewise, every word has some sense behind it. Behind the usage of every word, there is some sense. Let us take another example, pita. Okay, why do you call the person who is the cause for your birth, that is your father? Why don't you use some other word, brother or something else? Why only father? You have no answer again. Whereas in Sanskrit, pita means, pita is the word which is formed out of the root pa palane. That is, one who takes care of the whole family is called pita. Pati iti pita. If you find your mother is the one who is taking care of the whole family, call her by the name pita. We have no objection. Therefore, we go by sense. We go by meaning. That is the beauty of Samskrita. Every word is formed out of some particular meaning. We use every word sensibly. Not just like that because somebody else is using, why not I also use the same thing? No, you need not follow the same suit. You can change, but just go by the sense, go by the meaning, how the word is formed. Try to know the etymology of that particular word. Then you will know why only that, why not something else. Therefore, the logic is embedded within each and every word. Logic is embedded with every word of Samskrita. That is the beauty of Samskrita. Not only this, let me tell you, in English, not just the meaning, even the usage of word, the spelling or pronunciation is also, I'm just taking English as an example, that's all. For example now, P-U-T. P-U-T means put. U is used as U. U is used as U. U. So therefore, P-U-T, put. If that is the case, the same thing B-U-T is there. There you never use it but. You use it as but. So somewhere you use U as U. Somewhere you use U as a. So there is no logic behind this. Where to use a, where to use as you, u. There is no particular reason at all. Just because somebody has been using, we are also using it. Therefore, that is the reason we are not able to feed English into computer while writing some very good language. So therefore, while coding, we can't rely upon the English. Of course, English itself is born out of various other Latin and other languages. It is not the, the language which is the natural language. It is born out of the culmination of various other languages. Therefore, I'm just giving you this English as an example. In many other languages, the plight is same. Need not be the same with regard to sense or meaning or usage or pronunciation. Something else, of course. But whereas Sanskrit, what we write, we speak. So what you pronounce, the same thing you write there. There is totally no difference at all. Whether it is Vedavyasa Maharshi, what he used to write or spell, the same thing Kalidasa also used it. The same thing even recent Lakshmana Suri, a very great scholar, the same thing even our Guruji Sri Vishweshatirtha Swamiji was using, and same thing even we are also using. What Sanskrit was pronounced thousands of years before, the same Samskrita is being pronounced even today. With what meaning we used to have those words in usage, the same words are used even today with the same sense. That is the beauty of Sanskrit. And you call Sanskrit as a dead language? Great. The language which has no sense, the language which is used just like that without any logic behind that, and that is a wonderful language for you. And Sanskrit, which is, the same Nityam, Nirantaram, in the same form, with the same beauty in it, you call that as a dead language. Why? There is a conspiracy behind this. If you promote Samskrita, then where all other languages may go to hell. That is the notion they have. Actually, it is not so. If you know Sanskrit, you can learn all other languages and you can promote all other languages. I have many reasons here. Actually, I'm not going to get into the details of this here now. I just wanted to give you some example. Sanskrit, I have made some points within the short span of time. I don't know, I might be able to convey all these points or not, but of course, I'll try my level best. Sanskrit is the most interesting and scientific language of the world. As a language, Sanskrit is regarded by experts in linguistic and philology as a perfect vehicle of communication. See, in 1786, when the West was gleefully acquiring treasures, that is the physical or intellectual from India, then a person came to India. He is none other than Sir William Jones. While addressing Royal Asiatic Society of Bengal, you know what he said? The Sanskrit language, whether be its antiquity, is of wonderful structure, more perfect than Greek, more copious than the Latin, and more refined than either. These are the words of Sir William Jones. On the practical plane, one must acknowledge that in terms of its grammar, phonetics, vocabulary, and the Devanagari script, Sanskrit becomes a wonderfully efficient vehicle of communication. You should know this. It is not surprising that recent empirical studies about the relative suitability of different languages and scripts for use in computer programming and operation indicated that Sanskrit is in Devanagari script was not only suitable, but also that it is perfectly satisfied every requirement as an optimal medium for use. I would just like to throw light on practical and ethical advantage of Sanskrit learning. On 8th April 1983, you know what our former Prime Minister, Mrs. Indira Gandhi, said while addressing the scholars of Sanskrit in Sampurnananda Sanskrit University of Varanasi. She said, if Sanskrit was simplified, it could serve as a better link among the people in different states and solve the language problem. But I don't know why her own father was not able to implement Sanskrit as the national language. There might be different reasons, whatever it is. And even Mahatma Gandhi, you know what he said? Mahatma Gandhi said, Sanskrit is like the river Ganga for our languages. I always feel that if it were to dry up, the regional language also would lose their vitality and power. It seems to me that an elementary knowledge of Sanskrit is essential. It is not sentiment on my part that makes me say so. Gandhiji says, it is not sentiment on my part that makes me say so, but practical consideration of the utility to our country of this great language and the vast knowledge held by it. So he says, the practical consideration of the utility to the country of this great language and the vast knowledge held by it makes me say so. So this is how Sanskrit is all-time relevant, all-time relevant. Many people cooked some issues unnecessarily because they didn't wanted Sanskrit to be widely spread everywhere, because they had their own self, due to their selfishness, they might have many hidden agendas. So that is the reason they didn't wanted Sanskrit to be promoted at all. Hence, let me throw light on few issues. What is the influence of Sanskrit on other languages? What is the philosophical aspect of Sanskrit? What are the advantages of learning Sanskrit? All these things could be just summarized within few words. Dhananjay Acharya. Yeah, I think who is Mr. Scott?
Scott.
Yeah. Kripaya etat, please just try to, you are recording it?
Recording.
Okay, very fine. Then you have to, I think, complain to the cybercrime. Mr. Scott, there is one person, Scott, you can see. Can you remove him?
Yes.
Please remove him, Acharya.
Okay.
And later we will complain to the cybercrime.
Okay.
You just remove him, please. Thank you. And stop, and can you lock it? No more participants can join.
Okay.
Please. Thank you. There are some people on this platform who are trying to, divert the concentration of the August gathering. Anyway, so I am just going to throw light on the practical and ethical advantage of Samskrita. To start with, what is the use of, main use of Samskrita? I'll tell you. We are able to bring the national integration. This will help, definitely help in national integration. You know how? Today India has 3 major languages family. 3 major language family we have. The first family is based on Bengali, Hindi, Marathi, Gujarati, Punjabi, which are all, born out of Samskrita mostly. All these languages have anything between 60 to 80% similarity to Samskrita. And they use the same vocabulary of Samskrita. This is one language family. Second one, in India we have second language family, that is Dravidian language family, like Tamil, Telugu, Kannada and Malayalam. And even among these, the latter 3, that is Kannada, Telugu and Malayalam, have much in common with Sanskrit. And third one is Austro-Arabic, Austro-Asiatic languages. Austro-Asiatic language family, like Munda and Khasi, which also share vocabulary with Samskrita. So these are the 3 major language families which we have in the present India. So in fact, it is believed that all these 3 families are originated from one language family, continuum, in India. During the last ice age, the speakers got separated and the languages started developing independently. Historically, Sanskrit was regularly taught in schools, not only in India, but even in abroad. In India also, Sanskrit was the link language used in different regions. Post-Vedic religious texts, as well as texts on medicine, astronomy, philosophy, art and architecture, and important literary works were written directly in Sanskrit itself, in spite of the development of regional languages. We should definitely throw light upon this. So therefore, if one knows Sanskrit, he will be able to communicate with, or at least understand, most of the other Indian languages without even knowing Hindi or English. I bet even without the knowledge of Hindi or English, if you know Sanskrit, you will be able to converse very well, or at least understand what the people of various other regional languages of India speak or communicate. So therefore, national integration is possible if we start speaking Sanskrit, if we start communicating in Sanskrit, because it is binding all other languages. I don't know how this logic works. People saying that if you learn Sanskrit, all other languages will just fail, or all other languages would not be able to survive at all. I don't know where this logic came from. Instead, if you learn Sanskrit, you will be able to very easily grasp all other languages very easily. So this is one advantage. Second thing, I am just keeping in mind mostly Indians, and I'm throwing light upon these issues. Let me talk about the relevance of Sanskrit in the whole world later. Second thing is, I would like to read, see Newton's original English thesis. Just think, if I want to read Newton's original English thesis, then you know what I need to do. I have to follow 2 steps. First, learn the old English grammar. Second thing, then use the old English to read his paper. So directly you will not be able to understand Newton's original English thesis, because the old English grammar is different from the contemporary English grammar. Whereas similarly, if after 500 years someone just assume, if you want to read Shakespeare or Stephen Hawking's A Brief History of Time, I think all of you would have heard about Stephen Hawking's A Brief History of Time. If somebody wants to read after some 500 years, say it after some 500 years, if you want to read Stephen Hawking's A Brief History of Time, then you know what you have to do. You have to first learn today's English, because after 500 years, this might have totally changed. And then start read that paper. So this is the plight of English and all other languages. Whereas this is clearly a very troublesome matter. However, Sanskrit can easily solve this problem. Why? Because Sanskrit is grammatically fixed. Mostly we are using since 1200, 1300 years at least. Even before that. Because Panini's grammar was written according to historians in 1st century BC. So nearly 2100 years we are using Panini's grammar. Even before that there was grammar like Kasha Krishna, Apishala, Chandra, etc. But at least say 1200 years, since 1200 years, we are all using the Paninian grammar. So therefore, the same grammar we are following even today. There is no change at all. We need not learn some other new grammar to understand the Sanskrit literature after 100 years, 200 or 500 years. We need not worry about it at all. What Vedavyasa Maharshi wrote thousands of lakhs of years ago, what Valmiki wrote lakhs of years ago or thousands of years ago, or what was written by Kalidasa at least 1500 years ago, what was written 100 years ago by Lakshmana Suri, everything is same. There is no difference at all. So therefore, in this way, Sanskrit was the language of science for nearly 5000 years, and it is even today. But we are not able to decode it, that's all, because of our ignorance. So this is the second advantage. If you learn Sanskrit, you will be able to decode various scientific works easily. And third one is, Sanskrit is very useful even in the legal system of India. You know why? Today district courts allow cases in local language, right? High courts allow cases in Hindi. But you know, Supreme Court allows cases only in English. You just think, if we would have made Sanskrit as our national language or as a universally accepted language in India, along with having all other regional languages too, parallelly, then it wouldn't have been this problem at all. Because people who are fighting in Supreme Court, the lawyers, they also need to, learn English very well. Only then they have to present. So what should the, people of South India do? So it is, of course, they have to take the help of somebody else or learn English, fall in suit. Whereas if Sanskrit would have been the language of our nation, just think about it, it would have been very easy, because as I told you, national integration is happening through Sanskrit. Most of the words used in Kannada, Telugu, Malayalam, even in Tamil actually. Of course, in the states where Hindi is used, we need not say about it. It would have been very easy. So therefore, the legal system in India also would have been very much helped if at all Sanskrit would have been made the national language. So in this way, even the legal system is very much helped by Sanskrit learners. And point number 4. See, only people say that people who have not learned Sanskrit, they say that Sanskrit is mostly used in temples or in religious places only by the priests and those, the archaks. So people who are offering prayer or doing all these, conducting religious ceremonies, rites and rituals, only they use Sanskrit, they say. But is it true? Just think of it. Not at all. First of all, those priests who are using all these mantras, hymns, they themselves they don't know the meaning of those hymns, frankly speaking. Then, who are those who are having the knowledge of Sanskrit? It is none other than the common people like, say, professors or scientists or doctors or people who are studying in Ayurvedic colleges. Many of these people, even the management gurus, they are well versed in Sanskrit, many of them. So it is not it's a wrong notion. This is incorrect that only the people who are performing religious rites and rituals, or the priests who are performing puja on our behalf in the temples or religious places, are the ones who are aware of Sanskrit and not anybody else. This is not right. See, for example, let me tell you, Indian surgery known as Sushruta Samhita. Okay. Now, the Association of Plastic Surgeons of India, what it says is, the ancient Indian medical knowledge was carried into Greece and Arabia by Buddhist missionaries. I'm just reading out the description, detailed description of plastic surgical procedures found by the Association of Plastic Surgeons of India. The ancient Indian medical knowledge was carried into Greece and Arabia by Buddhist missionaries. The German, French and English surgeons were introduced to the older Indian method. During that period, I'm talking about 600 BC. Okay. During that period, certain German scholars who studied the original text in Sanskrit, British surgeons and French travelers who saw for themselves the rhinoplasty operations performed in India, revealed the wonders and practical possibilities of this specialty to the Western world. All these knowledge were written down in Sanskrit by our scholars. However, much of it was lost when, that many invaders, Mohammediyas, and many British people who came to India and destroyed our Sanskrit. Till then it was alive. Yet still plenty of manuscripts are still intact and untranslated. So it is our duty to decode them, translate them, and make it available to every common man. So therefore, we are able to, even today, as I think most of you would have heard about Dr. Giridhara Khaje. Dr. Giridhara Khaje, a very famous, renowned medical practitioner in Bangalore, Karnataka. He was the actual person who found out the medicine for COVID-19 first. But of course, due to various other reasons or many other political reasons, he was not allowed to share it with other nations or public, or what, there might be even other reasons also. Whatever it is, to a great extent, Dr. Giridhar Khaje's reinvention, I would like to say reinvention, not invention, because all these medicines were available already in Ayurveda. It helped most of them. So therefore, the person who had a lot of Sanskrit knowledge, with that, if they would have ventured into this, they would have got, even the English medical practitioners would have got the remedy for this, or solution for this, or medicine for this COVID-19 long back itself. Therefore, Sanskrit is very much useful in the field of medicine. Now, coming to the regional languages. As I told you, Mahatma Gandhi himself said that Sanskrit is like river Ganga for all other languages. If our regional language die out and get replaced by English, just think of it, that will be a sad thing to happen. He said then, Mahatma Gandhi said, if our regional languages die out and get replaced by English, that will be a sad thing to happen. We should ensure that such a disaster does not happen, but mostly it has already happened. So therefore, Now what is required is renaissance of Sanskrit. We have to once again bring back Sanskrit as a communicative language, as a national language. For that, we all need to learn Sanskrit. Definitely, Sanskrit is not meant for particular sect or particular region, religion, caste, creed, or gender at all. Never it was, nor it will be, nor it is. Only because some of them want to cook such stories and thereby make, some personal benefits, they are all trying to spread this hatred message everywhere. It is not so. See how bravely Uttarakhand, today the state, one of the states in India, Uttarakhand, in 2010 itself has declared Sanskrit as its state language. So the first language which you are going to study in Uttarakhand is not English or Hindi or any other language. Instead, it is Sanskrit. You are going to study Sanskrit as a first language in Uttarakhand. Have they not prospered? What is the hindrance they have been facing today because they embrace Sanskrit? Nothing. Totally nothing. Instead, they are all growing well. So therefore, as is evident from a purely scientific and social perspective, Sanskrita is very important. Not only will Sanskrit help in modern day cutting edge research in medicine, science, management, linguistics, law, and so on, it will in a great way help in achieving national integration. At least for this, we have to learn Sanskrit very well. Now, I think we can reason out few. I have just 5 to 7 minutes, I think, to end up my lecture. I'll just, name few or reason out why Sanskrit is very crucial or very much relevant for today's world in general, not only for our nation. See, computers, how we write software or how we do coding and all, computers require algorithmic programming, and scientific research has found Sanskrit to be the perfect language for their purpose. As I told you, English PUT is put and BUT is but, not but. Whereas in Sanskrit, it is not so. What you write, you speak. What you speak, you write the same. So its preciseness and variety owe to this research. So therefore, with that reason, I think it is very much crucial for today's world. Sanskrit is one language that can convey the biggest word meanings qualitatively and quantitatively in the least amount of words. In Sanskrit, we say, Anyuna Anatiriktam. When you speak, you should never speak, neither speak even one word extra, nor you should speak one word less. So it should neither be one word more, nor one word lesser than what you speak. It should be apt. That is called Anyuna Anatiriktam. That is how you use Sanskrit. In other languages, how many words you want, you can use. Whereas, Ekas Shabda Sushtu Prayuktaha, Swarge Loke Kamaduk Bhavati. Vyakarana say, according to the, Vyakarana Shastra or Vyakarana Shastram, even if you use 2 words instead of using 10 words, or even if you could use just 9 words instead of using 10 words, still you will be able to convey what all you meant. Then definitely a birth will be reserved for you in Swarga, they say. Because you have, spoken very less but conveyed everything. So such, like how every drop of water is very valuable today, you should not waste. In the same way, Vyakarana say you should not speak something which is irrelevant or which is of waste. Not even a single letter or word should be wasted. You should aptly use whatever is required. So such a disciplined language is Sanskrit. Sanskrit is one language that can convey the biggest word meanings qualitatively and quantitatively. That's what I said with that too in the least amount of words. Owing to the abundance of words and preciseness of letters, it is most expressive language. It is most expressive language. It is sometimes called, that is the reason, what do we call Sanskrit as poems of everyday life. Today we call Sanskrit language as poems of everyday life. Sanskrit has the largest library of words in comparison to any language in this world. Any language you take it. It is said to have 102 Arab, 87 crore, 50 lakh words which are used in daily conversation or in the Sanskrit literature. Even today, where can you find 102 Arab, 87 crore and 50 lakh words in any language? Even all put together, whether it is Latin, Persian or some other language, I think even still you won't be able to gather so many words. So therefore, some of the researchers say that in another 150 years, with a lot of research being done in Vyakarana Shastra and Nyaya Shastra, double this amount we are going to have words in Sanskrit vocabulary. So that's the greatness of Sanskrit. You can keep developing more and more words because there is a possibility of constructing words with the use of Prakriti, Pratyaya, Dhatu, etc. That is the beauty of Samskrita. You need not borrow words from other languages. Like today in Kannada we have many Urdu words. In Hindi also we have many Urdu words. Even in English we have many words borrowed from various other languages. So to develop a language, you need not rely upon any other language or languages. Sanskrit itself can develop by its own strength. That is the beauty, that is the capacity of Samskrita. So let us all take the advantage of this, learn Samskrita and thereby strive for the national integration and enhance our the quality of knowledge. So because we have knowledge, but quality of knowledge is what is required today. If we speak something, you need to speak logically. You need to speak in such a way that it is going to be useful to others and you are not speaking unnecessarily or using unnecessary words. Sanskrit teach you all these disciplines. So therefore, if at all burning of ancient libraries wouldn't have taken place by many invaders in this nation, probably we would have had crores and crores of works still alive or available to us. Even after losing those many works, crores of works, still we have so many works which are not even translated or decoded, or they have not been published. They have remained unpublished. So just think of it, after having lost so much of wealth, still we have so many works which are very much useful to us and we are not making any attempt to preserve them. Then how, what do you say, we are totally ungrateful to this nation wherein this great Sanskrit language was born. With these few words, I would like to request you all to put in your fullest effort in studying Sanskrit. Sanskrit is the language which carries culture, ethos, ethics of our nation. So it is not just a language which is used for just to communicate. Communication happens even between two dogs. A dog barks and another dog comes, it will understand. We might not be able to understand. So just to communication, if we are using language, then what is the use? Sanskrit is not a language which is used just for communication, but Sanskrit is the language which carries within it our culture, our ethos, ethics, moral values, and many more things. So let us all try to inculcate, incorporate, and imbibe the values which are present within Sanskrit language by learning it, by communicating through Sanskrita, and thereby strive for our own prosperity as well as for the prosperity of this nation. With these few words, I would like to thank Dr. Dhananjay Rao, the Director of Vedic Vedantic Studies, as well. I offer my salutations once again to the holy feet of Sri Vishwa Prasanna Tirtha Swamiji, who is the mentor of many such organizations all over the world. Thank you very much. And thanks for all the audience for having lent your patient ears. Thank you very much. Kayena vacha manasendriyerva buddhyatmana va prakrite swabhavat karomi yatyat sakalam parasmai narayanayati samarpayami. Dhanyavadah.
Thank you, Dr. Suman Acharya. Do you have like a few minutes for any question and answer if you want to take?
Please
So
go ahead.
the floor is open for
to
question and answers, for 5 minutes. So, anybody have any question, you can ask Dr. Suman Acharya.
Namaste, Acharya.
Yeah, please.
I am Ram Prasad
please.
from Delhi. It's a wonderful lecture that you've given, actually, and we thank you and Dr. Dhananjay Achar also. I've recently, become a student of Sanskrit by the promotions of Vedanta studies. They have started an online class, so I've already, got into this.
Very good.
In fact, the guilt of me not knowing Sanskrit has what has me into knowing it or learning it, actually. But my one question to you, Acharya, while I am, most of us, in fact, in this August gathering, come from a culture which actually is blended already with Sanskrit. Knowing and not knowing the language is one part, but we already are part of the Sanskrit culture. The only thing is that we are ignorant about the benefits and probably the knowledge of the language itself. But that's for a culture like Madhva community. I'm from a Madhva community, and we know the importance of Sanskrit, but we didn't have the opportunity to learn it. That's all. But the thing is that India is pretty diverse. It's a small country, but we are so diverse, and like us, many of them are already ignorant. The thing is that promotion of Sanskrit is very important, but is it generally necessary that it should become a national language first to actually understand it, or probably making people promoting it in a way that people will accept it and then it becomes a national language? What will be the correct approach? Because I see that the more we speak about Sanskrit, I always see that there are political self-interest in many regions, and they try to convert they try to develop or promote the hatred against Sanskrit and try to convert it as election benefits for them. So that's the benefits of actually the language promotions is getting lost. So I don't see it's a jinx state for promoting Sanskrit by making it into a national language first and then trying to promote it. Rather, it should be the other way around. Like at least I know that from the last week, since this online classes have started, at least 25 people have joined. So which means that there are 25 people who did not know the Sanskrit language is already converting into it. So probably there should be a non-violent a movement of Sanskrit getting promoted rather, and let the political wave happen in its own time. That's my humble understanding. Probably I may be wrong because you are in the thick of all this thing.
Thank you, Mr. Ram Prasad. It's a wonderful question. See, actually, what I meant by saying we should make it as a national language is not just, in our books or in our constitutional books. Like, because Hindi, they said, many of them agree and many of them disagree with this, that Hindi is a national language. Again, there is a fight even with Hindi. It is not the plight of Sanskrit, even of many other languages. What South Indians bring up, North Indians go against it. What North Indians say, again South Indians go. So this is already there. As you said, there is a lot of political, reasons behind it, and vendetta is there. So, but they don't want to actually promote Sanskrit because, as you said, there are many political reasons. But my intention of using the word national language is not like nationally spoken language. Let us try to promote Sanskrit by speaking in Sanskrit. If you start speaking Sanskrit and if you teach to one person, for example, now Dhananjay Acharya succeeds in teaching some 40 or 50 of them. You just think, if those 50 could teach at least one person, and they to other, let us make a chain of this. So in that way, one day, nationally, widely spoken language would be Sanskrit. Then one need not promote Sanskrit, or one need not protest against it, that why don't you make Sanskrit as language, national language, or why do you make it, or why don't you make it? This question never arises. Once you start promoting Sanskrit as a spoken language, the main problem is they say Sanskrit is a dead language, it is not a spoken language, it can never be a communicative language, right? So make it as a communicative language. First start conversing in Sanskrit, start communicating in Sanskrit, start having connecting it with all other regional languages. For example, now if you are in Karnataka, start conversing with somebody who knows Kannada well and make him understand what is the importance or significance of Samskrita, and thereby may you try to converse with him with those few words in Sanskrit which are already there in Kannada too. Likewise in Tamil, likewise in Andhra Pradesh, likewise in any other language. So you start promoting Sanskrit by learning Sanskrit and sharing the same with others. I am not expecting too much, I think. If I have studied Sanskrit, if I could teach one person and he could teach somebody else, then one need not make a rule or establish a rule or write it in your books, bring it into your books that Sanskrit is a national language. No, that is not necessary at all. Why today Hindi is spoken in many states? When was Hindi born? Only just 500 years before, 400 years before. But still Hindi is very much evident, and in many states they are speaking in Hindi. Why? Because it was widely spread everywhere. They started writing in Hindi. They started speaking in Hindi. In the same way, if we start speaking in, conversing, communicating in Sanskrit and make it, create awareness that it is very simple language, everybody can understand, anybody and everybody can speak and read the literature or language of Sanskrit, then definitely there would not be any such nuances or any such problems at all, I believe. Then automatically it will become the national language. We need not promote it as a national language. My intention of asking you to promote it as national language is not in the books, but in our kriti. That is in our daily usage.
Agreed, Acharya. Dhanyavada.
Thank you. Due to short time.
I have a question. Namaskar, Acharya. Jayashree here.
Can you make it brief? So we have a short of time.
From IIT Chennai, sir. So,
Please tell me.
So part of my question might be in Kannada. Nam kadi ella henmaklu Sanskrita matadbardu, helbardu. They say there are restrictions on women, especially when it comes to learning Sanskrit. Is it purely because we are not supposed to recite the scriptures, or is it for some other reason? There should be a scientific reason for it. I would like to know what the reason is, and also do you think that with the evolving times we need to evolve also and make it open to women also for the propagation of such a beautiful language?
Thank you. I could get it, ma'am. Thank you very much. First of all, let me make it clear. In nowhere it is said that Sanskrit should not be learned by women or girls or whoever it is. There is no such rule. Of course, there is there are few scriptures saying that they should not be given Vedic. What do you say? Vedic knowledge, or they should not be promoted to learn Vedas and all. That's a different question. Okay, let us keep it aside because it's a very big question and we need a lot of time to, convince people. Keeping it aside, but I don't believe it. I think everybody can study even those Vedas also in the present context. So because not all these rules are not universal. So we have to understand the pun of the Shastras. Why Shastra says so, or why Puranas or Vedas or Upanishads say so. But definitely Samskrita can be learnt by everybody and anybody. Everybody and anybody. Samskrita can definitely be learned by everybody. Otherwise, there were even many Brahmavadinis. There were many people, poetess. Kshama Rao, you would have heard about Kshama Rao, very great poetess in Sanskrit literature. So there were many Brahmavadinis, many poetess and all, even in Sanskrit literature. So there is no such thing in any of the scriptures saying that women are prohibited from learning Sanskrit at all. Of course, there is a prohibition for Vedic studies and all such things. That too is not relevant to the present world. Okay, it was the time is different, the context is different. So we should try to understand from the context. What is
Yes.
the intention of that? What do we do is, for example, let me, I think I would not be taking much of time. Just one example I would like to give. I was once, a professor in 2002 in Maharani's College of Bangalore. So when I was professor in Women's College, then there was a seminar organized with the title Nastri Swatantre Marhati. Nastri Swatantre Marhati means women doesn't have any independence. This is the literal meaning what I am telling you. Okay, this is not the actual meaning. This is the literal meaning what they had understood, and with that intention they had organized this seminar. And they had invited me. I was just sitting. I was not interested, but still they called me, and I was also, as a Sanskrit professor, I was sitting there. And some of them just they wanted to make fun of it. See, the Sanskrit professor is also here. He is teaching all the lot of girls and ladies here, but he himself, I think, would not accept this Nastri Swatantra Marhati. So Manu is such a useless fellow who has written all such nonsense things, so which is not relevant or not at all useful. All these things, blah blah blah, they were all talking. Then they said, "Oh, professor, could you also throw light upon this? Could you please come and talk?" Then I thought it's a very good opportunity. I said, okay, fine. If you really want me to talk, I don't want anybody to interrupt me in between. Please give me, what is the time? Let me know. They said 5 minutes you can talk. I said, very fine. Could anybody stand up and say, even amongst the people who are the great dignitaries who are sitting on the dais, I asked them, could you just spell out the whole shloka, Nastri Swatantra Marhati? Nobody knew. I was taken aback. I said, you don't know the whole shloka at all and you are conducting a big seminar on this. I said, okay, let me tell you. Pita rakshati kaumarye, bharta rakshati yavane, putra rakshanti vardhakye, nastri swatantra marhati. This is not the advice given to women at all. People don't even know the context of that. Pita rakshati kaumarye, rakshati is vartamana kala. Better you are taking care of her. For it is the foremost duty of the father to take care of his daughter when she is till she becomes young. And after that, bharta rakshati yavane, rakshati means protecting, that is continuous present tense. It's in present tense. It is not that he was doing or past tense, but it is in the present tense, saying bharta rakshati yavane. It is the foremost duty of the husband to take care of his wife. And whatever she wants, that's the reason the word, there's a wonderful word for the wife in Sanskrit, bharya, bharyate iti bharya. All whose wishes are fulfilled by whom, that person is called bharta and she is called bharya. So therefore, he should see to it that all her wishes are fulfilled without, any problem. You have to take care of her. You have brought her to your family, to your house. It is your foremost duty to take care of her, fulfill all her desires. So this is the instruction given to husband. And putra rakshanti vardhakye, oh my dear children, better you take care of your mother. She has been striving for you since your childhood, even when you were there in her womb. So better it is your duty now to take care of her. It is the instruction given to the children. And where is the advice given to the women? I didn't understand. Nastri swatantra marhati means swatantram. Tantram means she should not work for herself to take care of her life. She should not work for her livelihood. Even to eat her food, she should not strive, go here and there, beg, or work for herself and then earn some money. And no, she should not strive for that. It is the duty of the father. Later, it is the duty of the husband. And of course, after that, it is the duty of the children to take care of her in all these stages. She should not be left alone to take care of herself. Instead, these are the people who have to take care of her in all times and make her happy. Swatantram means, we translate it exactly into our language, local language. Swatantram means independence. So she has no independence. What? It is not independence. She should not strive for herself is the actual meaning of that Swatantra Marhati. Not that she should not be given any freedom. We don't know the difference between freedom and independence today. So that is the reason we are all struggling here with all these words. So without knowing what is the Smriti is intended to say or convey, we are just knowing the literal meaning of that, and we are coming to the conclusion, and we think that we are all very great professors because I understood that particular line. We are all extract bhashis. Take a line from Bhagavad Gita, or take a line from Manusmriti and start giving lecture for 1 hour or 2 hours on that. So without the proper knowledge of Smritis completely, we are just trying to, cull out some meaning, whatever we had some pre-notions, and trying to throw upon somebody else and pass on the same to others. So therefore, let us all first try to learn Sanskrit grammatically, etymologically, from basics. And after having learned to some great extent, then let us participate in debate or giving lecture and all these things. Even before that, we are still in a premature stage. Now itself, we just want to speak on Sanskrit. We just want to, dictate terms. We just want to, what do you say, like try to comment on all these Smriti, Shruti and all. If that is the case, it is not a storybook, my dear. That's what the Sanskrit says. So it is not a storybook. Smriti, Shruti, everything has its own value. So having understood the value, if we go through the whole text completely, otherwise why will Manu say, Yatra naryastu pujyante ramante tatra devataha, where women are worshipped, there you think there is no need of any other god, they are the goddess by themselves, you can go and worship them. Why will Manu say that? Is he mad? So without understanding the context, without knowing what is there in those Smritis and Shrutis or Puranas or what we call it as epics and all, I hate this word epic. Puranas are not to be called as epic. Actually, Puranas are Puranas. You can't change, the name of a particular thing as something else. Like how we say Sanskrit for Sanskritam. Sanskritam is Sanskritam. It is not Sanskrit. It is Sanskritam. English is English. So in the same way, I think if we try to know Sanskrit very well from basics, only after that, if we try to throw light upon that and try to understand very well, we will be eligible to comment on these Smritis. Otherwise, we are totally ineligible to even comment on those Smritis without understanding the actual essence or pun of those Smritis. I think with this question, we can end up this session. If any questions, I can give you my mail address, or through Dhananjay Acharya, you can even mail me. I will try to answer to those questions, if at all I am capable of answering. Thank you very much. Dhanyavadaha. Namamsi Bhuyamsi.
So let us move on to the vote of thanks. Let us take a moment to remember Sri Vishwatirtha Sri Padangaluru of Pejaramata Udupi, who had established Purna Prajna Vidyapita in Bangalore, which has trained many scholars on Vedanta. He was awarded Padma Vibhushan. He had done immense service towards society. He also conducted 38 Naya Sudha Mangala graduate for Purna Prajna Vidyapita institution. Currently under the blessing and guidance and support of Sri Vishwaprasanna Tirtha Swamiji, both Purna Prajna Vidyapita and Vedantic Studies and Research Institute daily being run. We would like to thank Dr. Suman Acharya for his wonderful lecture on relevance of Sanskrit language. He's able to articulate very well. He touched upon many points. So he started with, how the Sanskrit word, every Sanskrit has a meaning based on meaning. And he gave a couple of examples on Mata and Pita. He also touched upon how the Sanskrit word was written and how it is pronounced the same way. And he also touched upon Sanskrit language is not dead. He quoted that, what was spoken 5,000 years ago, what was written 5,000 years ago still is relevant today. What Vedavyasa Devuru has written, what Kalidasa followed, and even it's being followed. He also touched upon how Sanskrit can be a national integration language for India, how it can help the judicial system, a lot of, knowledge embedded in the medical system that can be, culled out from the Sanskrit. So he gave a lot of example on, how the Sanskrit, useful for integrating various Indian languages. And he also talked about how Sanskrit can help in bringing algorithm for computer languages, and then how the Sanskrit is very concise, in delivering the words, So thank you, Dr. Sumant Acharya, for his wonderful lecture and enlightening us.